Time now for the ghost stories of E. Nesbit. Tonight's chilling tale, The Ebony Frame.
When my Aunt Dorcas died and left me $700 a year and a furnished house in Chelsea, I felt that life had nothing left to offer except immediate possession of the legacy. Even Mildred Mayhew, whom I had hitherto regarded as my life's light, became less luminous. I was not engaged to Mildred, but I lodged with her mother and gave her gloves when I could run to it, which was seldom. I meant to marry her some day. Before the gloss was off my new mourning, I was seated in my aunt's armchair in front of the fire in the drawing-room of my own house. The room was comfortably furnished with rosewood and damask. On the walls hung a few fairly good oil paintings, but the space above the mantelpiece was disfigured by an exceedingly bad print, The Trial of Lord William Russell. The frame, though, beautifully and curiously carved in fine ebony, was as fine as the print was poor. Jane, my aunt's housemaid, who had come in with a lamp, noted my interest. "Mistress only bought that picture 2 days before she was took ill," she said. "But the frame she got out of the attic. There was a picture in it. That's upstairs too, but it's that black and ugly it might as well be a chimney back." Directly after breakfast next morning, I paid a visit to the attic. After some searching, I found the picture as black as the chimney back. I took it downstairs carefully and examined it. Neither subject nor colour was distinguishable. It seemed to be painted on a very thick panel, bound with leather. But why? Then the truth dawned on me. I tore off the leather binding, and the panel divided and fell to the ground in a cloud of dust. There were 2 pictures. They had been nailed face to face. I studied the first one in some amazement, for it was of myself. A perfect portrait, no shade of expression or turn of feature wanting, but in the dress men wore when James I was king. When had this been done? And how? Without my knowledge? Was this some whim of my aunt's? "Law, sir!" The shrill surprise of Jane at my elbow. "What a lovely photograph! Was it took at the fancy dress ball, sir?" Yes," I stammered. "Yes, that's right." Jane went, and I turned, still with my heart beating violently, to the other picture. This was a 3/4 length portrait of a woman in a black velvet gown. Her arms rested on a table beside her, her face was turned full forward, and her large, deep, luminous eyes met those of the spectator, bewilderingly. On the table by her were compasses and shining instruments, whose uses I did not know, books, a goblet, and a heap of papers and pens. But her eyes! I have never seen any other eyes like hers. They appealed as a child's do. They commanded, as might those of an empress. That evening when I was alone, I tore down The Trial of Lord William Russell, and I put the picture of the woman in its strong ebony frame. I had another frame made for my portrait, and I hung it opposite the fireplace. I had invited Mildred and her mother to come and stay, and after a long day preparing for their visit, I sat down before the fire, and lying back in a pleasant languor, I idly looked up at the picture of the woman. I gazed into her dark, deep hazel eyes, and felt my own dilate, pricked with a smart like the smart of tears. And then I saw the eyes of the picture dilate, and her lips tremble. I held out my arms. Her hands moved slightly, and a sort of flicker of a smile passed over her face. I sprang to my feet and looked at the picture. The ebony frame was empty. From the shadow of the worked chair came a soft rustle, and out of the shadow the woman of the picture was coming across the hearthrug towards me. Next moment a hand touched me. A hand soft, warm and human, and a low voice said, "You called me. I am here." At that touch and that voice, the world seemed to give a sort of bewildering half-turn. At once it seemed not awful, not even unusual, for portraits to become flesh, only most natural, most right, most unspeakably fortunate. I laid my hand on hers. Those luminous eyes were looking up into mine, those red lips were near me. With a passionate cry, a sense of having recovered life's one great good that had seemed wholly lost, I clasped her in my arms. "I am wondering," she said after a while, when we had made such cheer each of the other as true lovers may after long parting, "I am wondering how much you remember of our past." I remember nothing but that I love you, that I have loved you all my life." She leaned down towards me, her arm lay on my neck, and drew my head till it rested on her shoulder. "I will tell you everything you have forgotten," she said, laughing softly, and her laughter stirred memories which I just grasped at and just missed. "We loved each other. Ah, no, you have not forgotten that. And when you came back from the wars, we were to be married. Our pictures were painted before you went away, but then, because I had looked at the stars and gained more knowledge than other women, they must needs bind me to a stake and let me be eaten by the fire, and you far away." And her whole body trembled and shrank. "The night before they were to burn me," she went on, "the devil came to me, and I sold my soul to eternal flame. But my sin was for you. You see, the price I got was the right to come back to you through my picture as long as my picture stayed in its ebony frame. That frame was not carved by man's hand. My mother in her anguish had our pictures covered from sight. When you came home, they lied to you, and you married another woman. But some day I knew you would walk the world again, and that I should find you. And through all these years your face was against mine." She paused. "There was another gain," she said slowly, "I gave my soul for. It is this. If you also will give up your hopes of heaven, as I gave up mine for you, I can remain a woman. I can remain in your world. I can be your wife. After all these years, at last. If I sacrifice my soul," I said, "I win you." The words did not seem an imbecility, but she must have mistook the hesitation I may have felt in uttering them as some sort of doubt, for she said, "Forgive me, it is such a thing to ask." "No," I protested. "Sacrificing my soul to win you? Why, it's a contradiction in terms. You are my soul." But she shook her head. "I will return tomorrow night," she said. 12 is a ghost's time, isn't it? "And if you are decided then to give up your hopes of heaven, I shall live with you, and die and be buried, and there will be an end of me. But we shall live first, and oh, how we shall live." I laid my head on her knee. A strange drowsiness overcame me. Holding her hand against my cheek, I lost consciousness. When I awoke, the grey November dawn was glimmering through the uncurtained window. My head was pillowed on my arm and rested not on my lady's knee, but on the needleworked cushion of the straight-backed chair. I turned my eyes on the picture. There she sat, my lady, my dear love. I held out my arms, but the passionate cry I would have uttered died on my lips. That afternoon, Mildred and her mother duly arrived for their stay. Although I received them with cordiality, my genial phrases all seemed to be someone else's. Still, Mildred and her mother managed to keep the conversational pot boiling with a profusion of genteel commonplaces, while I looked up at my sweetheart in the ebony frame. And then Mildred, catching the direction of my gaze, looked at the portrait too and said, "Doesn't she think a lot of herself?" Suddenly she threw herself into the high-backed chair, covering the needlework with ridiculous flounces. Theatrical character, I suppose. Mildred. Sitting in the chair where my dear lady had sat when she told me her story. I could not bear it. "Don't sit there," I said. It's not comfortable." But Mildred would not be warned. With a laugh that set every nerve in my body vibrating with annoyance, she said, "Oh dear, mustn't I even sit in the same chair as your black velvet woman?" I looked at the chair in the picture. It was the same, and in her chair Mildred was sitting. I could not bear it. "I hope you won't think me very rude," I said, rising, "but I am obliged to go out." I walked for hours along streets and squares. Mildred was utterly forgotten. My lady of the ebony frame filled my heart and soul and spirit. As I heard 11 boom through the fog, I turned and went home. When I got to my street, I found a crowd surging through it, a strong red light filling the air. The house was on fire. Mine! I elbowed my way through the crowd. As I sprang up the steps, I saw Mildred leaning out of the first-floor window, wringing her hands. "Come back, sir," cried a fireman. "We'll get the young lady out right enough." "But my lady?" The stairs were crackling, smoking, and as hot as hell. As I reached the first floor, I felt arms about my neck. "Save me," a voice whispered. I clasped a figure in my arms and bore it with a strange dis-ease down the shaking stairs and out into safety. It was Mildred. I knew that directly I clasped her. "Now, sir, everyone's safe. Please, stand back," ordered the fireman, taking my arm. I sprang from his hands and I leapt up the steps. As I crawled up the stairs, the whole horror came to me. As long as my picture remains in the ebony frame, what if picture and frame perished together? I fought with the fire, and with my own choking inability to fight with it. As I reached the drawing-room, I saw my lady, through the smoke and the flames, hold out her arms to me. But before I could reach her or cry out to her, I felt the floor yield beneath my feet, and I fell into the flames below. They saved me, somehow. Curse them. My friends pointed out that as the house and furniture were heavily insured, the carelessness of a housemaid had done me no harm. No harm. I had lost my only love. I deny with all my soul in the denial that it was a dream. There are no such dreams. Dreams of longing and pain there are in plenty, but dreams of complete, unspeakable happiness, no. It is the rest of life that is the dream. But if I think that, why have I married Mildred and grown stout and dull and prosperous? I tell you, it is all this that is the dream. My dear lady only is the reality. And what does it matter what one does in a dream?
Anton Lesser was reading The Ebony Frame, the final story in our series of ghost stories by E. Nesbit, abridged by Roy Apps and produced by Celia de Wolfe. It was a peer production for BBC Radio 4 Extra. And on Monday, there's a spooky story from the pen of Elspeth Davy, Allergy, in our series A Collection of Bones. You may never want to eat an egg again after hearing that.